screen? Yeah.
Yes, looks great.
Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We'll be presenting on the Central Coast Fine-Scale Vegetation Mapping Project, providing a general project description and update. This project is funded by CRNA, CDFW, SCC, and USGS. And today's presentation will be led by myself, Mark Tukman, Eddie Fitzsimmons, Julie Evans, and Paul Escoffier. We're also partnered with USLT RCD, SBRCD, NV5, AIS, and UVM. Today's agenda includes an overview of the project. We'll hear from CDFW and SEC. CNPS will share updates on veg sampling and classification. Tukman Geospatial will provide a mapping update as well as information on the story map. And I'll provide a few more updates and then we'll have time for questions at the end. There's a Q&A at the bottom. Feel free to ask questions there as well. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that the land on which this project takes place is the traditional land of several Indigenous peoples, including and I'll do my best to pronounce these correctly, Amat Matsun, Northern Chumash, Costanoan, Rumsen, Illahone, Esalen, and Salinan tribes. These communities have stewarded the landscapes of San Benito, Monterey, and San Luis Obispo counties for millennia and maintain a deep cultural and ecological connection to the land. We honor their knowledge and ongoing contributions to the conservation of California's ecosystems. All right, let's start with the core purpose of this project. Our main goal is to provide land managers and planners with important geospatial data sets. These data sets will help them anticipate, adapt to, and address various environmental challenges. Some of the key issues we aim to address include drought, wildfires, climate change, sea level rise, rapid population growth, the spread of invasive plant species, insect pests, increased urbanization, and a variety of other anthropogenic and natural challenges. By providing accurate and current data, we help improve decision-making and planning, making communities stronger and more adaptable to change. All right, the scope of work covers 3 counties, including San Benito, Monterey, and San Luis Obispo. Together, they make up over 5 million acres of land, an incredibly diverse and ecologically rich region. Let's take a look at how the data and tools we provide can actually be applied in the real world. These data sets have a wide range of uses. For example, they can support wildfire prioritization, climate change assessment, flood modeling and planning, vegetation monitoring, environmental impact analyses, wildlife habitat and rare plant modeling, land management prioritization, strategic planning for mitigation, land use planning, and finally, all of these contributes to a broader community benefit, such as increased safety, ecological health, and long-term sustainability. Ultimately, these tools provide a data-driven foundation for smarter, more informed environmental planning and decision-making. This pie chart, which is based on usage in Sonoma County, illustrates who typically uses this vegetation data. Over half of the users are from commercial organizations, nonprofits, and state government agencies, highlighting the broad demand for this information. And I'd like to introduce our first guest speaker, Rochelle Boole, a senior environmental scientist with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Thank you, Samantha. Hi, everyone. I'm going to just share my screen really quick. See, did that happen?
There we go.
Am I sharing?
I can't see your screen.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. How's that?
Yep.
Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. As Samantha said, I'm Rochelle Boole. I'm a vegetation ecologist and the supervisor for the Vegetation Classification and Mapping Program with CDFW. I wanted to just take a few minutes to give you all a broader understanding of how this amazing Central Coast project is feeding into a larger statewide effort to survey and classify and map fine-scale vegetation in California. And that effort we call the Survey of California Vegetation. So in collaboration with the California Native Plant Society's vegetation program, who is also a partner on this project, VegCAMP's role for the state is to support the Survey of California Vegetation. And we do that by developing and maintaining the statewide vegetation classification. We set standards for the state for vegetation sampling, vegetation data collection, vegetation data analysis for developing the state's classification system. And we also apply the classification to fine-scale mapping. Through this process, we also provide range maps and rarity ranks for natural communities and also identify sensitive natural communities. Our ultimate goal is to complete fine-scale statewide vegetation classification and mapping data for the state. All of our vegetation data is accessible online as it is completed. The Manual of California Vegetation, hosted online by the California Native Plant Society, houses the statewide vegetation classification at the Alliance level. The Biogeographic Information Observation System, or BIOS, houses all of our vegetation maps and survey data. This is an online spatial data warehouse hosted by CDFW. If you use these QR codes, it'll take you straight to the bookmark BIOS bookmark page for all of the vegetation data that's existing on BIOS right now for that meet this Survey of California Vegetation standards. And then also our VegCAMP website houses our state standards and protocols and also regional project reports and all sorts of other vegetation related resources. That's kind of the broad overview of the program and what we do with a lot of help from a lot of other collaborators. So we do have an unprecedented number of concurrent projects right now across the state as a result of receiving some special legislative funding in 2022 and 2023. That funding was given to VegCAMP to fill gaps in fine-scale vegetation data in California so that we can offer better tools for more holistic management of our landscape here in California. Samantha outlined a few uses of this data. This map shows an area that shows our current projects. And also in yellow, we have our sampling projects, and our current mapping projects are in dark blue, and light blue are our completed sampling and mapping projects. So all the yellow and dark blue are current active projects. The special legislative funding, as well as additional support from several other entities, including CAL FIRE, state parks, the Coastal Commission, and many others have helped support this work, and more than 12,000 new vegetation surveys for the state within more than 11 ecoregions across the state will result from these projects. Also, over 18 million new acres of fine-scale vegetation mapping for the state. Of course, among these projects is the Central Coast Sampling and Mapping Project, which is contributing more than 1,700 new surveys and 5 million acres, as Samantha said, and of course, some lifeform mapping as well. This is a huge effort in general, but especially in the timeline we've been given to complete this work. Thank goodness we have had a lot of really amazing collaborators, such as the RCDs, Tukman Geospatial, AIS, CNPS, to help us get this work done. Because as a bulk of this work will be completed by 2026, Others will go into the specific timelines for this project, but a bulk of these projects that I just described will be completed by 2026. And this will leave us with a really good distribution of vegetation surveys within all ecoregions of the state. There's always going to be more refinement that can happen for data collection, especially for those harder to understand herbaceous communities, but all regions of the state will have data to inform an alliance level mapping classification. And then also by 2026, we'll have 77% of the state mapped at fine scale, which will leave 23% of the state ready for that final mapping phase to occur once the data are all analyzed and included in our statewide classification. So that's where we're at and where we're heading, and we hope to keep the momentum going and find funding to complete the mapping for these yellow areas on this map. These areas are ecologically unique and important regions of the state, as is the Central Coast. And I just want to, on my final note, I'd like to reiterate that collaboration is absolutely key here. For this project and all these projects statewide, we certainly would not be where we are right now without all hands on deck, and we look forward to collaborating with you in the future if we aren't already. I look forward to hearing more from the Central Coast team about the progress on this project, and want to thank you all specifically for the hard work that has gone into this project already. This is a labor of love. I know. I know that we're all doing this work because we believe in its value for conservation and management of California's natural resources. So thank you all. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. My contact information is on the VegCAMP website. All I have. Let's see if I can stop sharing here. Or did I already? Maybe somebody can just steal it from me.
Let's see. All right, did that work?
Yep.
Great. Oops. Thank you, Rochelle. I'd now like to introduce our guest speaker, Costula Valianos, a project manager with State Coastal Conservancy.
And we're excited to be supporting this project. I just wanted to take a minute to give an update on some funding that we're going to have available fairly soon. As you're all aware, Prop 4, the climate bond, passed in November, and the Conservancy has been allocated $33.5 million for that funding across our jurisdiction. And with the passage of AB 100 a couple weeks ago, our legislatures have released 90% of our funding so that we can start hitting the ground running with projects to fund. So we are hosting a webinar on May 21st next week. You can register for that, and I'll put it in the chat as soon as I get a chance. And basically, we're looking for implementation-ready projects, and that means projects that have their environmental documentation completed. This can be done through the May 1st executive order that the governor put out related to wildfire projects. And if you have questions about that executive order or don't know what I'm talking about, definitely write down my email and reach out to me, as well as projects that are ready through other pathways. We're looking for projects that benefit disadvantaged communities. The bond highlights 40% of the funding needs to go to disadvantaged and severely disadvantaged communities. Multi-benefit projects that include other priorities of ours, such as workforce development, tribal stewardship, good fire. This funding can also go for things such as equipment purchase and salaries and capacity building. So it really is quite flexible. I hope that you'll join us on the 21st. And if you have any questions, definitely reach out.
Great. Thank you, Costula. CNPS.
Hi there. I thought there were a few more slides before we went, but am I not correct? On slide 10?
Yep, you're all set to go now.
Oh,
No more
okay.
slides.
All right. All right. Let me go back a few slides. I see. Okay. All right. And let's do present. Sorry, you all. It's here. Share. Hopefully I'm sharing the right screen. Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much, both Rochelle and Kostula, for those introductions. And we just, want to say we're very thankful of the support that in this collaborative project that you're giving us because of all of the work that is going into the project from the various stages. There are many products that we are working on at this present moment. And here's sort of a overview of those data products from the work that the California Native Plant Society is doing in conjunction with Althouse and Mead, Inc. and California Polytechnic University, San Luis Obispo. We're working on the vegetation sampling classification in Keys. And then the additional work that feeds into the vegetation products goes towards wildfire products that a lot are derived from LIDAR and the analysis of LIDAR, and then the vegetation maps that first are the lifeform and enhanced lifeform maps on into the fine scale vegetation mapping. Make sure I can advance. I know on Zoom it's a little bit strange. Sorry. Oh goodness. I minimized one of my screens and now I've got to maximize it again. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Advance. Hopefully. Okay, there we go. So I wanted to give an update about our vegetation sampling and classification right now. We have been hard at work across a team of over 10 staff and many partners. The work that we do on our survey of California vegetation, which I think that Rochelle gave a great introduction, there's usually 3 different stages. The first stage being vegetation data collection, where we amass vegetation data, whether that be data that others have collected and or that get collected at the first stage of the Vegetation Survey of California project. All of that information that gets collected from field-based vegetation data across the landscape to represent all the different community types that occur within the region that we're sampling, which the region being over 5 million acres. That data then gets analyzed, and there are various types of analyses that go on. There are classification analyses and then other analyses that Tukman Geospatial will talk about later in this presentation. And then after all of those analyses, then the work, the very diligent work happening to do the fine scale mapping, which is a semi-automated process that we'll talk about later. The work that we do on vegetation data collection feeds into a large effort across the state that we work on in collaboration with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Vegetation Classification and Mapping Program, collaboratively between CNPS's vegetation program and their VegCAMP program, where we host what is called the Manual of California Vegetation. This is our statewide standard for categorizing and defining vegetation types. And as we work on this project in the Central Coast, we are continuing to define vegetation community types as we work on these projects. We synthesize information across millions of acres or hundreds of thousands of acres, and then that feeds into our classification system. This Manual of California Vegetation, or what we call MCV for short, is available online, and we update this, I would say, annually. We have an annual update. Usually that happens in the late winter or early spring. So the information that comes from this project, mostly the update of our categorization, because we're working on the classification analysis right now, will get updated into our MCV online by next winter, early spring. I want to say one other thing about our MCV is that it is compliant with the National Vegetation Classification System. And these classifications sort of from the state to the nation, all are sort of like in sync. And so as we work on information, we then supply that information to the national classification, and then it gets supported through an online through the National Vegetation Classification System as well. One other thing that I wanted to say is that this information that's fed into from our state classification, which our state classification, the information that you'll see online is at the alliance level. So that's sort of like the generalized floristic level, that information at the alliance, and then we denote what associations below the alliance on our Manual of California Vegetation online. That information is hierarchical, whereby we have a set of vegetation alliances that include everything from redwood plant community or Douglas fir plant community at the alliance level. Then above that is the National Vegetation Classification Group, and then above that is macro group division, on up all the way through ecobiome, subbiome, and biome. So it's a hierarchical system of classification that we work on across our state and across the nation. And those are defined by various ecological factors, such as climatic factors, as well as things like floristic factors and local environmental conditions at the alliance level, and then on up as you move up into that classification, broader and broader drivers that where vegetation is patterned in the landscape. In our work that we're doing currently right now in not only Monterey and San Luis Obispo counties, but also San Benito County and the rest of the Central California coast and Central California coast ranges ecosystems, is work that we're doing to not only sample the vegetation, but also then now to classify and write keys to all the vegetation community types. An overview of the work that we've already done in phase 1 in 2023 and 2024. This work has been done in collaboration, as I said before, with Althouse and Mead and Cal Poly SLO, but also there is a collaboration with University of California, Santa Cruz. They also are instrumental in the work that we're doing to sample vegetation across the many counties in the Central Coast and Coast Range ecosystems. So the work that was done last year and the year before, we collected a little bit over 2,200 surveys. And then we also collected 400 herbarium vouchers to represent the plants that were collected within the vegetation surveys that we collected. And then in San Benito and the rest of the Central Coast ecoregions, UC Santa Cruz collected 415 surveys. Upon all of that data collection anew, we also combined other existing surveys that existed within the Coast Range and Coast ecoregions. That was over 10,000 surveys that we are now analyzing at this present time. And those surveys represent over 190 different vegetation community types, whether you're on the near coastal zone and looking at something like Abronia and Ambrosia or other plant community types in that near coastal strip, or whether you're in the coastal prairie or oak woodlands and on up into chaparral and coastal scrub or other plant communities. We have over 190 vegetation alliances within the region that we're representing within this classification. And then we're also defining the associations that exist under the vegetation alliances. We believe that there's approximately 500 associations, but as we work on this classification, we're continuing to represent not only the associations that we already know about, but also new associations that we are defining from the vegetation data collection and compilation and classification we're doing right now. This compilation shows, what we compiled across many different 1,000+ surveys. And the compilation is for all of the Central Coast, California coast, and Coast Range ecoregions. So we're doing that analysis as a synthetic analysis of areas from north to south within the ecoregion and west to east. So this just shows the representation of the different data sets. And we just want to thank all the different partners that share data, whether that be U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was one of the entities, state parks was another entity, Bureau of Land Management, National Park Service, and a variety of other entities that share data with us that are being analyzed right now. And then a little bit about the process that we're currently taking in pulling together all of that data. We use different ordination techniques. And one of these ordination techniques is cluster analysis. And on the left, it just shows you a diagram of all of the different vegetation plots that are being analyzed. And the ones on that sort of in this, what we call a dendrogram, in this dendrogram, vegetation surveys that are similar based on the floristics or plants and the cover of the plants within the vegetation surveys. Those that are most similar are grouped together at a finer scale, and then those are less similar are grouped up at a much broader level within that diagram. And then this is how we can tell, oh, here is this vegetation alliance in this cluster above, and then this a different vegetation alliance in the cluster below, on down through the analysis that we do in that ordination. Once we define the vegetation classification units, as I said before, we look at defining at the alliance and association level. An example from the vegetation classification that we're doing currently is this serpentine or ultramafic cypress plant community called Hesperocyprus macnabiana, Hesperocyprus sargentii Woodland Alliance. And within that Woodland Alliance at this present time, we will be defining at least 2 new vegetation associations, one with a, manzanita association of Hesperocyprus sargentii with Archistaphylos bisboensis, that being one new plant community type, and then another being a riparian type with Hesperocyprus or Sargent Cypress riparian association as well. All of those different units of the classification at the alliance and association level, as well as in the group and macro group level, we are writing plant community keys to those, both for the fine scale mapping, as well as just all of the floristic vegetation community types at the alliance and association level. And here is just a representation of that snippet of our key to vegetation types in the mapping key of the Hesperocyprus type, and that's 3C on the screen there. In the middle is a snippet where that community type comes out in the key. And maybe I can pass the baton over to Paul to give a little bit more, and I'll just advance the slides, Paul, if you want to kind of go on from this slide on.
Sure, 1 second. Yeah, so across the Central Coast, it's a very diverse region. Currently, there's at least 190 vegetation alliances described from the region, including several rare Manzanita-dominated chaparral alliances. but many more, including Santa Lucia fir, and our many serpentine outcrop herbaceous vegetation types. There's also many rare and sensitive species in the region, 104 of which we encountered in our surveys, including 9 federally endangered or threatened species, which were not the target of our surveys, but we just either, well, we generally just found them by accident, which is cool. And we submitted some CNDDB forms for some of those to help document rare species as a sort of bonus bit of data from this project. Okay, next slide. So here's a quick summary of some of the changes we're proposing to the vegetation classification so far. We have several new associations within the Santa Lucia Fir Alliance, a new Ulmus rhombifolia association, those Hesperus cyparis associations Julie just mentioned, some knobcone pine and coulter pine and Monterey pine and bishop pine associations, some new oak associations, and yeah, many new shrub associations. We're just getting started, but we already have 5+ new associations in the Arctostaphylos crustacea tomentosa alliance. And yeah, there will be many more before we're done. And next slide. Julie, do you want me to keep taking this? Great. Okay. So yeah, the vegetation data we collect, the primary focus is for helping define this vegetation classification that we use for mapping, but there's many other potential uses for the data. As I mentioned a couple slides back, we happen to run into rare species, and so we're helping to document the range of rare species and also the associates that they co-occur with. We are also helping describe the characteristics of these various vegetation types, including their species richness and their range, and documenting any impacts that might be present in those vegetation types, which can factor into rarity ranking for sensitive natural communities. The data can also help identify areas that would be priorities for conservation easements or open space, and can also help target areas that might be good candidates for prescribed fire, thinning, invasive species removal, or targeted grazing. And then also they provide points on the ground for mapping. A lot of extra recon is required to make the final map, but our surveys do provide a quick baseline for what's where. And then our survey data can also help feed into models for fire behavior and invasive species, and help document other disturbances. And yeah, so our timeline, we have submitted our survey data to CDFW along with photos of all the surveys and permits. We're currently working on finalizing the survey database, so we're putting final vegetation names on every survey. We are finalizing our classification and all the new alliances and associations we're proposing, and working on our various vegetation keys, both the mapping key, which is targeted at the 3-county area that's being mapped in this project, and then a floristic key that goes down to the association level for the whole ecoregion. And those will be done by December 2025 and hopefully available to the public by then. And then we will also be doing some amount of ranking for sensitive natural communities. Next slide. And yeah, here's just a little snippet of some of the folks who were instrumental in us getting out into the field and providing data to aid in our classification and providing funding so that we could do this work. Yeah, many different partners. Oops.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. I noticed a couple of people on the call that we failed to thank, so I'll just call them out by name. City of Slow City of Slow Open Spaces were very helpful. They have some great land, and also County of Slow Parks. And everyone else, you should be represented here. Sorry if we forgot you.
One of many, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, and thanks, Paul, for rounding that out. And we'll pass the baton.
Thank you very much, Julie and Paul. It's nice to be here and excited about this project, as we're really like right in the middle of it, or even more than maybe about halfway through it. And with this great team, we're lucky to get to work with CNPS, and also lucky to get to work with the other partners, including Aerial Information Systems, who's our partner in vegetation mapping. And so today I'm going to talk about the vegetation mapping, the data products related to that. So I'm going to talk about the LiDAR data that we just released for the region, thanks to the Coastal Conservancy and others, and to talk about the wildfire products that are upcoming that we're working on now. So starting with the vegetation maps. So 2 types of vegetation maps that this program will produce: the enhanced lifeform map and the fine scale vegetation map. This is for the 3 counties: San Benito, San Luis Obispo, Monterey. This is a schedule. The enhanced lifeform maps are now out and available, publicly available. The fine scale vegetation maps will be released. The final version is scheduled for March of 2027. We'll have drafts of those maps in June 2026. Just a real quick summary of our methods for making these maps. It's a semi-automated process. We use tools like eCognition and machine learning and a ton of manual image interpretation. That's the not automated part, and the part that takes the most time. And we first produce an enhanced lifeform map that is more floristically general than the fine scale map. So you can see like deciduous hardwood is a class in the enhanced lifeform map. We do a lot of field work, more machine learning, and a lot more image interpretation to get from the enhanced lifeform map to the much more floristically specific, detailed, fine scale vegetation map. So that's our workflow. This is an example of the enhanced lifeform map. This is for San Luis Obispo County. And like I said, now we have Monterey and San Benito County completed as well. We use imagery. NAPE imagery is really important to our workflow, and LiDAR. Again, eCognition, machine learning, manual editing, and we have this general classification for the enhanced lifeform map. So around 30 classes. And you can see the legend there. This is just an example. If you zoom in as what the map looks like, this is just hollow polygons. I think this is Paso Robles area. And then we can turn on the colors of the map. And the legend colors are only showing what's in the view. So we're not showing all 30 classes because it's limited by what's actually in this area. This is another view of the map in Slow County somewhere with a more natural landscape, just so you can kind of see what the map looks like. Just familiarize what the data looks like. And then this area is along the coast. Just wanted to show some, kind of give you the look and feel of what the enhanced lifeform map is. Thanks to Eddie for these slides. And Eddie's going to dive in a little bit more sort of into the methods of how we do the editing later on at the end of my presentation, just to give a peek. So yeah, the maps are out there and we're really happy about that. That's a lot of work by our team, a lot of hard work to get to this point. And you can download these maps at pacificvegmap.org, data downloads. This is just a screenshot of Pacific VegMap. So now I'll talk about the fine scale map, the much more detailed fine scale vegetation map that is usually for woody types at the alliance level of the NVC, MCV, the hierarchy that Julie talked about. So you can see the types of the alliances that this is a map in San Mateo County. We mapped about 106 classes versus 30 in the enhanced lifeform map. It's just bringing back that diagram again. We'll skip through that. Foundational data, again, we use the enhanced lifeform map to build the detail into. So it's the foundation of this fine scale map. Using imagery, LiDAR, CNPS's work is absolutely critical. They provide, not only do they provide all of that reference, that ground verified reference data to help the mappers, but they also provide the classification rules that we use to define the map classes and make the map. It's the most important document that we have during our work. And it's a semi-automated process. And again, these maps will adhere to the state of California's fine scale veg mapping protocols. So in the fine scale mapping, there's 3 objectives. The first is to understand the variation in the vegetation on the ground for the mappers. Then the second objective is to understand the variation in the imagery and the ancillary data. Ancillary data is mostly LiDAR derived data. And then making the linkages between the variation on the ground with the variation in the imagery and the ancillary data. Those are kind of the 3 primary guiding objectives of what we do as vegetation mappers. So we could break those down. The first one is understanding variation in vegetation patterns on the ground. And how do we do that? We do it, CNPS really does most of that for us. They go out on the ground at the beginning of the project and they collect tons of surveys that characterize the vegetation communities, the releves that they collect, the rapid assessments. And then they analyze those surveys, creating the mapping key that's so critical for us and the descriptions of the different types. And then our teams go out on the ground while we're doing the mapping and we validate places, we collect field observations that augment the CNPS data. So that's understanding variation in vegetation patterns on the ground, understanding variation in the imagery and the ancillary data. It's a lot of image analysis. It's looking at the NAPE imagery. It's looking at multiple dates of NAPE imagery. It's looking at Landsat and Sentinel imagery. And then it's looking at the ancillary data. The canopy height model from the LiDAR is absolutely critical in the work that we do in our mapping work. We look at it all the time. Canopy cover, other forest structure metrics, things like distance, vertical distance to streams that helps us focus on areas of riparian vegetation. So that's understanding variation in the imagery and the ancillary data. And then lastly is creating those linkages between variation on the ground to the variation in the imagery and the ancillary data. And that's done first with machine learning, which is the automated part of our workflow, using a lot of training data to predict the map class. But then it's using our brains and our expert knowledge of vegetation and remote sensing to do manual image interpretation. That's Dylan Loudon, our lead analyst, about 10 years ago. And then the critical to our workflow is getting input from the local land managers that understand the vegetation on the landscape in their area better than anyone else and can provide guidance to us about where we might be off. And we can make refinements and changes to the map based on that expert knowledge. So that's something that's coming up that we hope that we will ask you for when we're ready in about a year to review our draft maps. Lastly is the accuracy assessment, which I'll talk a little bit about in a little bit. I'm going to skip this. And then this, just to show, again, another example of a fine scale veg map. This is one that was literally completed yesterday in Alameda and Contra Costa, thanks to our awesome team. I want to shout out Eddie and Julia Murphy for the great work on this great map. But again, the point is there's a lot of floristic detail in this map. There's also a lot of attribute detail. I think we have 30 attributes characterizing everything from hardwood and conifer cover to impervious cover within a stand to the stand LiDAR stand height and stand density. So lots of really valuable information for land managers in these maps. These are the minimum mapping units that we use. So you can see it varies by feature. So like agricultural types, 1/4 acre. Developed types, 1/5 of an acre. Wetland types, 1/4 acre, and then upland types, 1/2 to an acre. And then each of these vegetation maps that we've worked on, and certainly the ones in the 3-county area, will have quantitative accuracy assessments performed on them. So for this, we do an accuracy assessment allocation, so like a stratified random sample of AA site targets within our draft fine scale veg map. And then we have teams of botanists that go out and they collect accuracy assessment surveys using Survey 123, using CNPS's now standardized system for doing that, which is awesome. We have a dashboard that tracks target surveys versus collected surveys. So we're kind of proud of this, which shows the teams in real time, like how many they have left per map class. One of the key things about accuracy assessment is the QA/QC that has to happen on these surveys after they're collected. And then for the accuracy assessment, the kind of the data products that are published from this are the error matrices that show user's accuracy, producer's accuracy for each of the fine scale map classes where accuracy was assessed. We also provide fuzzy accuracies as per the CDFW standard. So that's accuracy assessment in a quick nutshell. Just keep showing you pacificvegemap.org because we're putting all of our data sets up here. You can also download the vegetation maps once they're complete at CDFW's BIOS website. I'm going to talk about wildfire and LiDAR products. So first I'm going to talk about the LiDAR. We've just released a bunch of LiDAR derivatives for the three counties, and we've released the impervious surfaces map for the 3 counties. So this is new data. I'm going to talk a little bit about it and then talk about the other wildfire products that the State Coastal Conservancy recently funded. So for the LiDAR products, they cover 14 counties. This shown in the map to the left here, including Monterey, San Luis Obispo, and San Benito. They're published by county. So each of the data products covers 1 county. They're made from the best available, most recent 3-depth LiDAR point clouds, meaning that in some counties, and including the Central Coast counties, it's not a single date of source LiDAR data because we don't have that. So it's the most recent, best available. And up on the North Coast, we have not released Humboldt, Siskiyou, or Del Norte counties. The plan is to release those in July once USGS green lights those point clouds for public access. And why do we do this? We do it because the point cloud is pretty hard to use. It's not something that's accessible to most people. The derivatives, those derivatives are accessible. So the derivatives that we're creating, like slope, aspect, terrain, hill shade, canopy height, on, those are usable, and they're usable for lots of different things. And we found this, we started doing this in Sonoma County when we realized that project in Sonoma County 10 years ago, the project was to create a fine scale veg map because that's what the open space district needed to kind of fulfill their mission. But as part of that, we needed LiDAR and we collected it, and that was part of the project. But the end users of the LiDAR data they're across many disciplines. So it's kind of like this added benefit of doing a fine scale mapping project is that you create the LiDAR derivatives and they serve lots of people for lots of applications. So we really are excited to be able to do that. And so we're publishing a stack of derivatives, 1 meter derivatives, 10 meter derivatives, and point-based metrics. And I don't want to kind of put everyone to sleep with this, but I'm going to show the list of the derivatives. These are 1 meter raster derivatives: digital terrain model, digital surface model, slope, hillshade, aspect, northness, eastness, planform curvature, TOI, TPI, surface roughness, geomorphons, geomorphic index. This data, the analytical work to create these derivatives was done by NV5 in their shop in Corvallis, Oregon. So kind of a massive computing effort undertaken by NV5. The 1 meter forest structure rasters that we produced, normalized DSM, the canopy height model, which is probably the most widely used of all the derivatives for forest applications, canopy slope, and then 2 different canopy cover rasters at 1 meter, and then a set of many metrics at 10 meters. And I'm not going to talk go into the details on these, but for those who are managing forest land, these are really useful for things like estimating carbon, timber inventory kind of stuff. And then for us, for vegetation mapping. And then the ladder fuel metrics on the bottom are useful for understanding where the dense understory fuels are. And now, just to show, thanks to Tyler McCarthy for making these slides on my team, some nice visuals of a few of the derivatives that you can download at Pacific VegMap for the counties in the Central Coast. This is just showing a few of the topographic derivatives, the hillshade, which is amazing for so many different things. Great for seeing under the forest canopy and seeing roads under the forest canopy. Excellent for using for seeing the morphology of streams and just to see the ground laid bare. Slope geomorphons, which are really cool because it's one of the best GIS data sets that I've ever seen for sort of, if you want to see landscape features, like where are the ridges on the landscape? The geomorphons are really useful for that. And then on the bottom right, aspect. All these derivatives come directly from the digital terrain model. And then some of the examples of the forest rasters, the canopy height model on the upper left, the canopy cover on the upper right, the percentile height, the 75th percentile height, which is one of the percentile height rasters, and then the ladder fuels raster on the bottom right. So we're so excited to be able to get these out there and distribute them. And then I'm just going to talk for a couple minutes before Eddie takes over here and does a little bit of a demo, just a few minutes about upcoming wildfire products, again funded by the Coastal Conservancy. And I'm going to I'll read them out. Impervious surfaces, the 5-meter fuel model, wildfire hazard and wildfire risk to structures. The impervious surfaces map is also available now for the 3-county area, which is really cool. You can use it, download it, use it in your GIS. And just to show what it looks like, the impervious surfaces map is a polygon or vector GIS data set that maps all human-made impervious surfaces, classifying them into 5 classes: buildings, paved roads, other paved surfaces, dirt and gravel roads, and other dirt and gravel surfaces. And this just shows a few, thanks again to Tyler McCarthy for this slide, shows the impervious map in, I think this is somewhere in San Luis Obispo. So super useful. And we actually take this map and embed it in the fine scale veg map, but do it at the polygon scale. So we'll assign each polygon in the fine scale veg map a percentage of each of these impervious classes. The 5-meter fuel model, this is something that we'll create from the enhanced lifeform map combined with a number of LiDAR derivatives, canopy cover, ladder fuels, canopy height, and also burn severity. And we'll crosswalk those 5 inputs to create to the Scott and Bergen fuels classification, the 40 fuel models. And the benefit of this is that it uses our enhanced lifeform map, which is excellent, and it uses LiDAR attributes, and it's at 5-meter resolution, and that is compared to the sort of de facto standard of Landfire, which is 30-meter resolution, doesn't use LiDAR at all, and it uses sort of a regional, or actually a nationwide vegetation map. So kind of increasing or improving the data quality of the inputs for the fuel model, and then using the fuel model to, and here's an example of fuel model for Alameda and Contra Costa counties. You can see the different classes, the non-burnable classes, the grass, shrub, timber, litter, and timber understory. And then we will use that 5-meter fuel model as an input to wildfire hazard and wildfire risk to structures maps, which we'll be creating over the next 4 months or so with input from partners in the Central Coast. And this is an example of the wildfire hazard map in Santa Clara County and wildfire risk to structures map. This is in Alameda and Contra Costa County. We just got a few more here. What made these projects possible? The decline in the costs of imagery and LiDAR data, the availability of LiDAR data, which 10 years ago was virtually not available throughout California. There's a few places where it was. Now it's, I think we have, if not statewide coverage, very nearly statewide coverage. And now more frequent collection. Reliance on standards like CNPS and CDFW's standards, protocols for collecting data, protocols for assigning, map classes, reliance on the federal standard for fuel models, fuels classification, the ability to do semi-automated work so we don't have to do everything by hand. So using e-cognition for image segmentation, machine learning to do some of the grunt work, and then having GPS-enabled field data collection where we don't have to collect everything on paper anymore. And CNPS has really led the way in making that happen over the last, I'd say, 3 years. Really just huge strides there. And then for us, for our mapping work, to be able to use Python to create repeatable, reproducible workflows, code that we can use again and again on each project and iteratively refine and improve on each project. The ability to make the data products easily accessible, downloadable, even massive LiDAR data. Like we're talking about 50 gigabyte geotiffs that 10 years ago it wasn't feasible to distribute, even 5 years ago, over the internet. Now all of those LiDAR data sets are downloadable for you to get, and with people's better broadband, doesn't take that long. And then just the economies of scale from the building communities of people who need these data sets, and having everyone pitch in and help fund the data. And I think this is the last slide, Eddie, but we created a story map to show what this project is and provide, I guess, a few objectives. One is to talk about what the project is, what the data products are, the timeline and the schedule, and then to provide access to the data sets. And so we will continue to refine and improve this story map and update it. But you can go to it now and check it out here. I can just scroll through it just real quick. It has a lot of the things that you saw in this presentation, and then some of the interactive things that we put in here. And again, and it will have links to all the data sets that we produce. So that's story map for you. Shoot, Couple more slides. Input from partners and users that we need. These meetings are really to let people know what we're doing and when data sets are coming out. But we also, the second and the third bold bullets, soliciting partner data. If you have fine scale vegetation maps for an area that we can integrate into our work, that is extremely important. We want to be starting with the best available data. We've already got a lot of those maps. Probably we have them all, but we're not sure. So if you know of a map or have a map that's a fine scale vegetation map, please let us know. Also, partner review is critical. So getting people's engagement and asking you all for some of your valuable time to provide input, look at our map. When the fine scale draft map is ready, we'll provide you with a web app that you can easily go to and just like zoom to your area and check it out and drop points if you see things that don't look right to you. And that is such a big, important thing for us. Hopefully not a huge amount of time investment for you. So stay tuned for that. And we'll also be soliciting sort of input from the fire community regarding our wildland fire products coming out in the next 4 to 6 months, roughly. So thanks again to the funders, to VegCAMP, to the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Natural Resources Agency, Coastal Conservancy, Department of Conservation, USGS. Thank you very much. And I think that's going to do it for me. And Eddie Fitzsimmons is going to give just a little sort of a deep dive into the fine scale mapping and the work that we're doing there. And just want to let folks know that we will send out, Sam, I think we'll send out a link to the slides. Is that right? After or later?
The slides will all be available in the folder that's linked in the agenda.
Cool. All right. I think that's all. And I think we could take questions. We'll have time for questions after Eddie's done with his things. I'm going to stop sharing here. And thank you, Eddie, for taking over when you're ready.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. All right. I think everyone should be able to see my screen right now. Oh. Oh. Oh, no.
Maybe we can take some questions, Eddie, while you get that sorted out over there. Oh, there it is.
Worry.
Am I here?
Yeah.
I see it.
All right. We did practice this before this meeting and everything didn't crash, but everything just crashed. So
All
right. We'll give this maybe one more shot, and if it keeps on crashing, then we'll go on.
Yeah, Eddie, I might suggest you going off camera. That might help too.
Yeah, good idea. All right. Thanks, everyone. My name's Eddie Fitzsimmons. I'm the project manager on these veg maps over here at Tukman Geospatial. We give a little demo on our editing process and the ArcGIS project we use and all the reference data we use. But first, I just want to briefly acknowledge all the fine mappers that are working on this. Debbie Johnson, Lisa Cotterman, and their team over at AIS. And then over here at Tukman Geospatial, Laura Askham, Brian Krebs, Lauren Hirsch, Tyler McCarthy, Julia Murphy, and Tyler Strahl. Takes a strong-willed, multi-skilled individual to do this work, and they're in the map mines day in and day out, making wonderful data products for everyone to use. I just want to give my thanks to all of them and their hard work. So here over on this ArcGIS Pro project, we're just going to a little rundown of all the data that we use. First off, so our editing process, we do what we call these tiles, these little squares that you see. So we have roughly 18,100.
Eddie, not seeing your screen.
Oh, thank you. What about now?
Not yet.
That you're sharing, but it doesn't. I don't.
There it is.
There we go. All right, thank you. So our editing process, we use these what we call tracking tiles. We have roughly 123, or we have roughly 18,000 of these 123 acre tiles. So we do our editing one tile at a time. We'll go over some of the reference data. These field observation points is a service that we share amongst other mappers. So AIS uses it, CNPS uses it, and it's a data set that we use internally that's kind of, not as fleshed out as your typical survey data, but the data there is more for the mapping perspective. So when we go do field work, this is what we collect our data in. These are just some internal data sets that we use if we do lots of peer review amongst the other mappers, and we'll leave these points down with comments on if there's something that we want to talk about or fix. For our field process, what we do is we'll do some like preliminary editing in our area that's been assigned to us, and then kind of get an idea of it. And as we go along the way, we'll drop these validation targets. So we'll use field maps on iPads out in the field to kind of see areas that we've identified for field validation. And we also use this service pretty much all the time, but we do a bigger push on it in the beginning of each mapping stage. And then we have all these existing vegetation maps that I'll open up on another screen. So Mark mentioned this. We have the Carmel River veg map, Hunter Liggett, the Garrapatta State Park veg map, Pinnacles, Gavilan Ranch, Santa Lucia Preserve. We use the Weisslander sparingly in certain situations, but that's a statewide data set. Salinas River, the Santa Susana veg map, and the Santa Rita veg map. If there's anything here that we don't have, please let me know. Or Mark or Sam or anyone. But yeah, we definitely will incorporate existing vegetation data into our process. And it is extremely beneficial, especially in some of these areas with low access. Then we have our point survey data. So we'll, if there have been any large projects such as the Pinnacles veg map that have a lot of point data, we'll use that as a reference data set. We have this iNaturalist data that we use very sparingly. This is all stuff that has the geoprivacy tag is off, so it's relatively accurate horizontal accuracy. But that's kind of the problem with the iNat stuff, is that the citizen science is great that everyone's out there doing it, but it's hard to know how horizontally accurate the points are. So what's great about the iNat data is that they tend to have pictures on here. So, in an area where there's, this is a neighborhood, it's a little wooey neighborhood, and there's access, but, some areas there's no access, and there will be pictures. So we love to use the INAT stuff just to kind of have a better idea. Up close pictures of plants aren't really that helpful for us, but sometimes there's landscape photos. We love it for that. And these INAT points are also the research grade ones, so multiple people have verified it, but we use these very, very sparingly. We never like make a call based off of the INAT stuff. It's just kind of, if we're in an area where there's no data, we'll use it to kind of get a little bit of a head start on what we're trying to suss out. We have the Consortium of Herbaria's CNDDB data set that we use. Again, this is we vet this kind of on who took the data and how temporally relevant it was. So if it's been taken in the last like 10 years, we definitely put more weight onto that than something that was taken 40 years ago. And if it's taken by folks that we know and trust, we'll definitely rely on that more. Then we have, so all the CNPS data that they're collecting right now and wrapping up on that, and then all of the existing data that CNPS uses. So that data has a lot of weight. We don't really second guess that data. Don't worry about this stuff. We have a tool that we use that we made that will automatically like pull out water and stuff like that from areas using NDVI, and that is what this is. So you can just kind of run this tool in a little square and it'll pull out all the water if the machine learning didn't already do that. So this PR26, this is the big guy. This is what I am actively editing right now. So just started this area. So this is what I will be changing the geometry and changing the map labels on. And this attribute table is for PR26. So this fine scale field is the one that I'm actively changing. We use a lookup table to join our abbreviations on. So this allows us to like actively update the abbreviation. It's the only way you can kind of get around that. I know this is not Cercocarpus montanus, but just to show you as an example. So that changes. And we also have a little label function that actively calculates the acreage. So we know if we're within MMU or not. Super helpful. We'll get to these in a second. And then, our LiDAR derivatives that are in here, kind of everything that Mark showed, we use to help make our calls. And the canopy height model, incredibly important for imagery. So all the geometry and all the decisions will go by the 2022 NAEP imagery, but every kind of last 10 to 15 years, NAEP is helpful for us. Just certain things pop in certain gears of imagery. So it's always like Quercus chrysolipus, something like that. Like there are years where it really shows its kind of yellow characteristic, and in maybe 2022 it's kind of hard to differentiate that from even like Quercus agrifolia. So the kind of part of our job is being a plant detective, connecting dots, and all of these various years of imagery are super helpful for that. And we also just have, so all this imagery is local on our network, and we just have some image services that are provided by the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Thank you to them for that. And then in addition, we have all sorts of other stuff that's not NARC. We use historical imagery in Google Earth to kind of give a better idea. We use Street View when applicable, and so many other field guides and CNPS's illustrated field key of Monterey County, all sorts of stuff that you can't see that we're looking at it all the time to help our decision-making process. But let's see. We'll just start to do some editing in the next 5 minutes. That can show you all what we do, and then move along. So we use these things that we call masks to help focus our attention. So there's, you look at this kind of tile, there's a lot of developed area in here. It's definitely a lot of shrub, and this shrub has a unique spectral signature that you don't see a lot. That makes me think it's manzanita. It's kind of a lot of Quercus agrifolia up here. Definitely some ornamental trees, eucalyptus. Kind of zoomed out, it's hard to tell that this is a pine. It's kind of very similar colored as Quercus agrifolia, but definitely getting some pine vibes there. So I kind of like, I look at everything, kind of get a brief understanding of what I'm looking at, and then I go into this, start using these masks to like really focus my edits. So what this does is it only shows what life form type or fine scale type that we're focused on. So this mask only shows all of the developed things, and this just allows me to quickly zoom around the tile to see if there's anything that any errors of commission in here. So like this kind of pops out briefly as like I definitely see a lot of herbaceous in here. I see some ornamental trees. So I might just turn that off for a second to see the context of the adjacent polygons it's around. So I definitely probably want to do a little bit of editing here. And the tools that we use to edit, really we just use split, the split tool. We use the merge tool kind of sparingly. And then, yeah, that's kind of the bread and butter. So right here, I'm thinking maybe I'll pull out some of this herbaceous from this developed polygon. Probably get another little forest out of there, and then pull out some more herbaceous from this. Put these all together. This is when I like to use the merge tool just to clean it up. Call this all herbaceous. It's a little narrow right here, but we're kind of going fast and loose for this. And then, yeah, I think we have, it has to be 10% tree cover for it to get a forest class polygon. I think we've got that in here, and I'm seeing some Quercus agrifolia and some eucalyptus right here. So I think I'll put all of this stuff together. That. And then it's kind of preliminary edits. Once we're really focused on the forest stuff, we'll fix this stuff up a little bit in the next couple of minutes. But just kind of as we clean up the developed. So this was, like a 1.5 acre developed stand that these wildland urban interface areas are always difficult, both for editors and for the machine learning. I actually think the machine learning did a really good job over here, kind of relative to how it's been in the past. This stuff can take definitely on the higher end of amount of time it takes to edit all of these things. So right here, it's kind of got all these little mess of little slivers and polygons, and I'm just going to merge this all together as developed. We do have like post-processing that'll automatically do this at the end, but for some of these things, it might be my own personal preference. It drives me crazy to see all these little slivers and labels and stuff. So I like to clean it up a little bit as I go along the way. And then maybe we'll just kind of skip ahead because I know I'm already close to the 15 minutes. So yeah, we'll do all of these little passes. We'll look at agriculture, herbaceous, wetlands, and then once we get into the forest types, we'll focus on shrub, weak pine. Actually, that's an internal thing. This weak pines, it's just the dominance level is different between some of the pine species to get the math class. So maybe we'll just take a quick look at some of the shrubs in the area because that's what we spend a lot of the time on here doing Monterey editing. So I'm taking a look at the shrub mask. Yeah, this is everything that's been called shrub in the area. I'll use this kind of in conjunction with the CHM, the canopy height model. So the way this is symbolized is that anything below 15 feet doesn't show up on the CHM. So what we're seeing here is stuff over 15 feet, which is maybe an indicator that it's a forest class. So yeah, just a little bit popping up. I'm not really worried about any trees popping up in here. I am seeing this developed little area. You got like a driveway and a house. So this might make our 1/5 of an acre threshold. Let's see. So yeah, it does. So that's a great edit to pull out. We want to get all of that stuff correct. And then, yeah, I think we have kind of a unique little shrub assemblage over here. You can't see it, but I have the field guide to manzanitas written by Michael Kaufman, Tom Parker, and Mike Vasey. Mike Vasey's our manzanita wizard that we correspond with. He definitely kind of gives us. We'll do calls to answer specific questions, but he also kind of gives us a good breakdown of all the manzanita species that occur within our project extent. Manzanita species are tough enough to ID in the field, so you can imagine what it is like for photo interpretation. But we're seeing here, this is a point where you can't trust INAT. I'm maybe there is some Arctocephalus crustacea planted, but I think a lot of this stuff is actually Arctocephalus pajaroensis. This is going off of from reading the field guide to Manzanita. It is endemic pretty much just this area of Monterey. We're up in the north up here, just to give everyone a little bit of an understanding. This is kind of the only area it exists. So it's great that we're able to pull this out. So kind of looking at this polygon, actually there are, I said in the CHM, there's not a lot of trees to pull out. The thing I did not consider when I said that is that these trees do neighbor these Quercus agrifolia polygons. So we're going to pull out this Quercus agrifolia. Just put it together with this other Quercus agrifolia polygon. We see here, so I kind of, this either looks like it was mechanically treated or it burned, but it definitely, like you kind of see the scarring on the land cover makes me think that something anthropogenic happened here or a fire. So I might, jump back in previous years just to see, what's going on. So this looks like it was manzanita and it probably got pulled out, which makes a good indicator this is probably just a little herbaceous patch. I think for now, I will leave it as herbaceous and just kind of merge it with this neighboring manzanita polygon. And then we're going to give it, so machine learning doesn't do shrub. Shrubs are difficult. End of story. It's difficult to edit, difficult to photo interpret, difficult to machine learn. But I am pretty confident that this is Arctocephalus pajaroensis. And then we have this drop-down list of kind of every alliance that, or map class. It doesn't actually have to be an alliance. This is an association that CNPS came up with in their mapping guide is in here. So I'm gonna change that designation on both of the polygons, pajaroensis. That. And then on this right map, you saw that it was all kind of zebra striped. And now it gets this color symbology that we use. I actually didn't talk about that. But on this right map, it's just more of a reference that is linked together with our left map. It just kind of gives us a brief overview of all the map classes that are over here. So, this light green is all Quercus agrifolia. You can tell there's a lot of Quercus agrifolia. But I am over my 15 minutes. So just imagine that you do that about 18,000 more times with about 10 more life forms. And then you have a map. So thanks everyone for watching that.
Thanks, Eddie.
Yep.
Back to you, Samantha.
All right. All right. If you have any questions or want to get involved or need more information, please don't hesitate to reach out. Here are the main points of contact for the project, including emails and affiliation. So we're happy to connect, whether it's about data access, collaboration, upcoming meetings, or how this work might support your efforts. And thank you again for your time today. We look forward to working with you, and we're happy to take any questions you might have. All right. Um, we have Mindy in the Q&A. Is there a way to access the data without a Google account? Yes, I believe Ray downloaded if you're talking about the folder with the agenda and presentation, um, there's a link in the chat for that.
Yeah, maybe it might be good to know what data, Mindy, you're asking about.
Yeah.
And Mindy, I believe the link I sent it gives everybody access because sometimes our Google Drive we would need to like individually give access to share with everybody. So I did drop an open link, but it still requires a Google account to access the drive and download it. At this moment, I'm not sure how to download it without it getting zipped up because it's such a large file. But if you don't have a Google account, you could reach out to me and I'll get that to you personally.
I saw that Blair Lavolsi asked what program I used. That is ArcGIS Pro, made by Esri.
And then I see everyone, as things get answered, if there was something that was answered, there's a little click between open and answered, FYI, on the Q&A, just in case you haven't used Zoom very much. Yeah, and as we're wrapping up, I think, Sam, it would be maybe just great to, thank the supporters and funders of the project again. I know there was a slide near the end of the PowerPoint, but yeah, just wanted to make sure to thank the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the California State Coastal Conservancy, California Natural Resources Agency, U.S. Geological Survey, and others that supported with your in-kind time too, like the California Native Plant Societies and Lisbon chapter were definitely instrumental in getting out there with us.
Absolutely.
And could we pop the URL of the story map, Mark, into, I see that as a question, the URL.
Oh yeah. Let's see if I can do that.
I just put it in there.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Eddie.
Any other questions before we go?
I'm not sure about the PDF hyperlinking thing. Did we, though, provide a folder for the PowerPoint?
Yeah. I will send out an email to everyone with the correct hyperlink and documents included in that.
Great.
Perfect. If no one else has any other questions.
Also just want to thank, the Monterey County, the RCD there in Monterey County. They were definitely instrumental for us too, of land access, and continue to be. So yeah, thank you so much for your collaborations as well. Plus the Upper Salinas Los Tablas RCD that I know that the Coastal SLO worked regularly with.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you all who attended. This has been a it's great to see all the work that the Tukman team is doing currently, but also just, thanks everyone for staying tuned to the work that we're doing. And we look forward to continuing to get this work out into people's hands as we have the data available.
Absolutely. All right. I think we got all the questions. Yeah. No hands up or anything. Great. All right. I think we can end there. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye.